Broadway, a charming village with the familiar honey glow of Cotswold stone. It was here that Peter and Angela McSweeney had chosen to enjoy their retirement.
We love Broadway, we love the atmosphere, the shops, the village and the people that live in it.
It is a respectful area. Everybody likes to make their gardens look nice.
Across the street, the McSweeney's neighbours, Claire and Richard Mayman, have lived in Broadway for over 20 years.
This is our house. We live in the beginning of the road.
We are younger.
By a long way.
Yeah. And we just feel protective. We just feel that these people are vulnerable, so we just keep an extra eye and an ear out on their behalf.
And also living on the same street was the Brown family, Peter and Helen and their son Robert.
When we first moved in, the Brown family were very friendly.
Helen Brown came over socially on many, many occasions, where we used to have chats and cups of tea. It was always sort of ringing me up and saying, is everything all right? Is there anything I can do? Don't forget, you can always call on me if there's anything needs doing. We trusted each other, absolutely.
It seemed the neighbours had the sort of relationship that everyone hoped for.
Robert was the only child of the Browns. He was indulged, most definitely. He didn't want for anything. He was always turned out very nicely, always got nice designery clothes.
We'd often see him when he was a teenager walking up and down this road.
So he had a charmed life.
Robert had left home, but returned to the close-knit community when he decided to open a cafe in the village where his parents still lived.
Robert Brown took on this business, called it Fox's, and we just watched him and the business work very successfully.
He drove a nice car, and we thought, well, wow, this is good for him.
With business appearing to be going well, in 2010, Robert Brown turned up at Angela and Peter's door with a proposition.
I ushered him into our lounge through here and I invited him to sit there. He then offered his proposal.
Robert's proposal was that he needed the money to start up a new business in Stratford-upon-Avon.
He wanted to borrow £50,000 for this new venture. The £50,000 came as quite a shock.
When we were a little bit sort of hesitant over the 50,000, he assured us that he would pay it up as quickly as he possibly could. He shook hands with Peter and then off he went. We felt comfortable that we could actually loan it to them because of the friendship between us.
There was no paperwork to the deal between neighbourly friends. And unbeknown to the McSweeneys, they weren't the only neighbours Robert had approached with his proposition.
I remember sitting in the conservatory chatting to him very casually.
I think we said right at the beginning, ooh, Stratford's a distance, but he was so enthusiastic and so positive, and because it was a business that we knew, you felt it was an opportunity both for him and actually for us. I suppose he not flattered us, but led us to believe that we might be part of this expanding empire.
Claire and Richard also decided to lend Robert money for the new Stratford cafe. £20,000.
There was a trust between us as decent people.
But less than 6 months later, Robert Brown was asking for more money from the Maymans.
The tone for the second loan was quite different because by then his back was on the wall, and he implied that if we did not help him with the second amount of money, then almost certainly we would never see the first.
Feeling they had no other option, the now increasingly concerned Maymans agreed to 2 further loans to their neighbour, totalling £50,000.
We became very, very worried for this business that he had embarked on in Stratford, and that our money was not safe.
They were right to be worried, as the Stratford Cafe appeared to be failing, pushing neighbourly relations to breaking point.
We were advised that the bailiffs had gone in.
His first words were, "Peter, I expect you're worried about your money." And Peter said, "Too true I am."
Having loaned £120,000 between them to Robert Brown, the son of their neighbours and good friends, for his new venture, a cafe in nearby Stratford,
He led us to believe that we might be part of this expanding empire.
relations between neighbours were now under strain as the business proposition struggled.
There was one occasion she came out from her house and she put her arms out to me, and I put my arms out to her, and she said, "It's going to be all right, it's going to be all right." And I said, "Well, I do hope so, Helen."
With the bailiffs now banging down the cafe's door, Robert Brown's father paid the McSweeneys an unexpected visit.
So I opened the door, and Peter Brown was in quite an agitated state. He said, we've got problems. He said, the bailiffs are in at Foxy Brown's. So he said, "I need some money." So I said, "Well, I'm sorry." I said, "Go and ask somebody else." I said, "You're not asking me." He said, "Well, I don't need my cash." He said, "I don't need cash." He said, "All I need is a credit card." And I said, "Well, you're certainly not getting my credit card." I was very surprised that Robert's father came over, because it was actually the first time that we'd had any sort of conversation about the business or anything of that nature.
Fearing for their £50,000 investment, Peter and Angela decided to go and check out Robert Brown's Stratford Cafe.
And we were walking down the street towards the restaurant, and we saw a big white van outside. And Peter turned to me and said, "Oh, they're not having a refurbishment already, are they?" And then, of course, when we got nearer, we realised that the cafe was in fact being evacuated. Peter walked over to the front door of the restaurant, and Peter Brown came out to speak to him. I think his first words were, "Peter, I expect you're worried about your money." And Peter said, "Too true I am." And he said, "Well, you'll get paid." He said, "I don't know how." He said, "But you'll get paid."
Despite Peter Brown's assertion, months went by and there was no sign of the money. The once friendly Browns were now giving their neighbours the cold shoulder.
This is Robert Brown.
That is Robert Brown.
Not even so much as a hello in the street.
They carry on employing gardeners, shopping at Waitrose and Marks and Spencer's. They still drive the fancy car. They carry on as though nothing has changed.
Although it's not the parents' debt, the neighbours hold them partly responsible. Unable to get any answers, Peter McSweeney demanded a formal meeting.
They presented me with this piece of paper which had the terms of his proposal. And it was now turning into a 10-year plan. I expressed concern that I was going to be 80 years of age by the time the repayment was made. They seemed rather surprised that I was upset.
And with that, the argument got rather heated.
I needed to check legally to see that we had a contract, really, which was a valid one. Robert stood up in unison with his father. It was as though they were acting out a play.
And said, "If you take legal action, you'll get nothing."
While the McSweeneys reeled at the gravity of the situation, over the road, the Maymans, still unaware of their neighbours' involvement, sought legal advice.
The solicitor was great, just put the facts in front of us, painted a very black picture. We hadn't got legally binding documents. What chance there was of getting our money back? Minimal. I think then the realisation of what we'd got into hit home.
Furious they might lose all the money they'd invested with Robert Brown, Claire was at boiling point. One night she snapped and drove her car over to the Browns' drive.
I suppose all my anger was being roared out of this poor car's engine. Long enough to make me feel a bit better, long enough to see Robert's parents running from window to door to door to window to try and work out who and what was going on the drive in front of their house. It gave me a small release. It was like an elastic band snapping. Something had just made me very, very angry. I couldn't do anything else, but I could do that. First time we all sat round this table, we were like lumps of lead, all of us, weren't we?
We were.
We were.
I think I was in tears.
You were,
actually.
Angela.
I was in tears.
It all fell into place, actually. We recall seeing you in the restaurant in Stratford.
Oh, did you?
Yes, we called in by chance when in the early days when they were refitting it.
And we were there.
And you were looking at
Robert
some
ushered us
surplus
away.
equipment.
He
Really?
ushered us away, so we wouldn't actually see you.
I didn't know that.
So
Yes.
it all fell into place.
Well, Robert said to us that you'd come to look at a safe.
Oh, that was the reason why we were there. Oh, the
So-
devious what's it?
Yeah.
We always thought that we were the only people that...
Yes, well, as you did.
So did we.
Did he pick on us deliberately?
Oh, I think so, Angela. I feel the more I think about it, the more I feel that he just weighed up the reaction of each set of neighbours should he approach them. But what is sad, Peter, is they were friends.
Oh, absolutely.
And they were good friends.
In total, the Maymans and the McSweeneys had loaned Robert Brown £120,000. In March 2013, Robert Brown declared himself bankrupt. Concerned he might still approach new neighbours on the street for money, Claire sent out a warning letter.
I decided to send it anonymously, and the whole purpose of this letter was to warn the new neighbours of what was going on. Dear neighbour, Robert Brown is now a self-declared bankrupt. All of our monies are lost. This letter comes to you for information, but more importantly, as a warning that they may, in desperation, approach you for money.
Robert Brown wrote a response, defending his actions.
Robert Brown's reply was that at no point was anyone abused, and to say there was lack of remorse or regret is simply untrue. I was extremely annoyed when I read it because at no time did he imply shame of what he'd done or offer any real apologies for what he'd put us through.
With the prospect gone of getting any money back, the fight would become one for dignity too, with the dispute dividing the community.
There are rumours and gossip and whispers and this happened, that happened, this was said, that was said.
The Browns even put their house on the market.
We have been told that certain neighbours believe that we personally have put pressure for the house to be sold. That is not true. There are neighbours now who will cross to avoid us, neighbours who would have walked up and down now drive up and down so that they don't run the risk of bumping into us.
Since the bankruptcy, ownership of the Broadway cafe appeared to pass to family friends of the Browns, enabling Robert to continue working there as manager. This was a constant reminder to his neighbours of their loss.
Come on, we better hurry, otherwise they'll be gone.
Richard and Peter want answers. At the moment, communications have broken down and they want to know where they stand.
Hi, is that Helen?
Yeah, good luck to you, Richard.
Can we have a few words with you, please? Helen? We just wanted to take the opportunity of asking her, and as you can see, she doesn't want to talk.
Robert Brown and his parents were contacted to give their version of events, but they never responded. Life in Broadway goes on, but it is no longer the place it used to be.
What they have done is wrong, totally immoral. They have no shame.
They'd taken all this money from us, and all because we thought we were helping somebody.
In total, the families had given Robert Brown £120,000. To date, he has returned just under £13,500 of their money. In 2007, retired scientist Pamela Booth said goodbye to the hustle and bustle of a busy town in search of a quieter neighbourhood.
I really did need to move somewhere where I felt more comfortable, where I could enjoy the community.
She relocated to a picturesque village on the Isle of Anglesey, North Wales.
Isn't it friendly, the island?
Beautiful place. I wouldn't live anywhere else.
The people are
Don't
lovely.
tell anybody else, girl.
No.
They'll all want to come.
I know, I know. When I first moved, I thought, really, this is going to be home. There was the freedom to move around, there was the freedom for my 5 dogs and my 9 cats. I love my animals. Can you tell?
Pamela's best friend Linda is a regular visitor.
Yeah, this is lovely, isn't it?
Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it? She's always amazed that I can leave my keys in the door. She expressed concern at first, but now she got quite happy with it.
One day, the two ladies met Pamela's new neighbour outside her house.
I opened the door and there was a lady stood there. I didn't know who she was. And she said to me, she said, I'm Pamela's neighbour. She pointed out to both of us that the car had a puncture.
Which presented us as being all women with a problem.
Delith Jones lives just 7 doors up from Pamela's house.
Because she offered to help us get the tyre off
Yes,
and get us
she
back
did.
on the road. We thought, oh, lovely, what a nice neighbour. That's really, really good.
She seemed really lovely. I thought she was a really nice person.
Having seemingly friendly neighbours she could count on was also important to Pamela as she suffered from bad health.
In about 2005, I was diagnosed with a very rare autoimmune illness. With the osteoarthritis that I have in my legs as well and my hips, it makes me very unstable because the medication I take affects my bones and muscles as well.
With her best friend Linda living 140 miles away, Pamela came to rely more and more on her new friend Delith.
She said, what type of jobs have you got piling up? And I said, well, I need some painting done outside on the patio. She painted the shed. I mean, it was really nice of Dallas. I really did think, you know, with doing a job like this and just rolling your sleeves up, I had a really good friend.
In return, Pamela regularly welcomed her new friend into her home.
She told me, really, she was very cold because she couldn't afford the oil to put in her heating. And I said, well, you're very welcome to come and sit here, you know, with your knitting or what have you, or use the broadband connection. I really wanted to be a good friend, you know, and to help her. It doesn't hurt, does it, to help somebody every now and then?
But best friend Linda wasn't so sure about Pamela's helpful neighbour.
I was concerned when I found out that she'd been spending a lot of time down here, hours on end. When you said to me she'd no oil for her eating, she'd no eating on at all.
No,
and I actually said to you, do you feel used? And you actually said, didn't you, well, as far as I'm concerned, we're helping each other.
Yeah.
She's staying warm here.
Yeah.
As their friendship grew, Pamela became more trusting of Delith.
She'd taken on board the fact that I'd leave the keys in the door. And I think she also realised if she called out, Pam, I'm here, I'm just going to use the broadband, is that all right? She just used, and I had no suspicions that she was doing anything else.
But in July 2013, Pamela made a worrying discovery.
So I came down the stairs to get my purse. I opened this side of my wallet where I keep my debit card, and it had gone. So I thought, well, don't panic. I'll go to the car in case it had just slipped out of my purse. I checked the front, and then I checked behind the driver's seat just in case it had fallen through. When I came back, and I rang the bank, They asked me what time I'd used it and when was the last time I'd used it, and I told him I'd used it on the Thursday, and they said, well, it had been used again on the Monday to make a withdrawal of £60 from Llangatho Post Office. Well, I told them there was no way that could be me. They cancelled the debit card because obviously they didn't know where it was, and they advised me to ring the police. That was the start of all the problems. I received a phone call from the police saying that they'd arrested Delith and taken her to the police station, and they showed her footage of CCTV both inside and outside the post office at Llangatho. She was withdrawing the £60 and she was driving my car.
Learning it was Delith who had stolen her debit card left Pamela and her friend Linda astounded.
I mean, I was just shocked. I couldn't believe it.
Well, I couldn't believe it.
We didn't want to believe it, did we? We didn't want to believe that she'd taken your card and used it to withdraw money, and that was just, then it all just spiralled, didn't it, from there?
Pamela's trust had been betrayed, leaving her in a state of shock.
It just made me feel so totally numb. I have never ever felt like that.
And Pamela couldn't escape the fact that she was living on the same street as her betrayer Delith, who has declined to tell her side of the story.
I noticed many a time behind the blinds that she was looking out, and I thought, well, you know, if I'd done something like that, I wouldn't want to be looking at the person I'd done it to. You know, I thought that was wrong.
Worried that the £60 might not be the only money Delith had stolen from her, Pamela decided to check her bank statements.
I knew that some of these withdrawals definitely weren't mine. I cried, and that was the first time really I'd lost all the numbness that I'd had. And I thought, well, the best thing to tackle this is to go through them all, write down all the information I needed, where it was taken out from and everything else, and the amount. When I came to January and there was these 3 withdrawals, and then later on through the summer months there was this huge withdrawal of £180. I've never looked at anything so distressing in all my life.
Over a period of 10 months, Delith had stolen Pamela's bank card on 14 occasions, taking a total of £1,074 from Pamela's bank account, a significant amount of money for retired Pamela.
I just couldn't believe that somebody could be so clever and so deceptive. I just wish I'd never even said hello to her in passing in a friendly way. I wish I'd had nothing at all to do with her. No matter how hard a life you've got, you don't betray a friend. You never betray a friend.
Distraught at her treatment, and with winter's huge fuel bills on the horizon, the situation was looking desperate for Pamela.
Yes, my house had previously been warm, but it certainly wasn't going to be, you know, over this winter, unless I could get some more money together. Oil is expensive, but every year I top up my oil tank. Obviously, I was not going to be able to do that this year, you know. Yes, my house had previously been warm, but it certainly wasn't going to be, you know, over this winter, unless I could get some more money together.
On the 31st of October 2013, Delith pled guilty to 14 counts of fraud by false representation. She was given a 12-month community order and 100 hours of unpaid work.
She had to pay me back the full amount. It was decided at the court at that time that she would pay the money back at £5 a week. The thought that somebody can gain so much from taking so much from somebody and then get away with paying £5 a week, to me, that is a slap on the wrist. And bearing in mind that I have an incurable life-threatening illness, and it's going to take her over 4 years to pay this money back, well, I could be dead.
Pamela still lives only 7 doors away from Delith, but is yet to find out why her neighbour stole from her.
I think she's either hiding or not in.
What do you think she's doing?
I think she's hiding. I'm wondering what she is thinking about what she has done.
And although Pamela was the victim, it appears to have split opinion in the village where she lives.
I understand you've been saying in the village that you have a lot of sympathy for her.
Yes, I have.
Why? Would you like to
She's an
explain?
unfortunate lady.
You do? Why? What do you think to me as the victim? I
I
mean,
feel sorry for you as well.
but you haven't expressed that in
Do
the
I need
village.
to?
Well, I think if you're taking one side in the
I'm not
village,
taking sides.
well, it felt as if you were when people said you'd been into the shop.
Being very rude.
I'm not being rude at all.
Please don't insult me.
I am not insulting you. I'm merely asking for the truth.
People's property.
I aren't on your property. Well, obviously, I'd known all along that I was never going to get the money back. It was only going to be a pittance every week. And I was really worried about how I was going to manage to fill my oil tank. And I had such a lot of bone and muscle pain with being cold. And then the phone call came.
After seeing a newspaper article on Pamela's troubles with her neighbour, a local couple decided to anonymously give £500 to help her through the winter months.
Could have danced in the street if I'd have been able to. I really could. Really, really restored my trust in people.
Although the couple's kindness revived her faith in Anglesey's community spirit, Pamela's less trusting than before.
Pamela now locks the door. She's changed the locks on the doors, and it's back to how it was, really, when we used to live down in West Yorkshire.
But there's one neighbour she'll never invite into her home again.
And she's lost such a lot. Not only have I lost a friend, but she has lost more than she'll ever know.
On the outskirts of Carlisle live builder Phil and his wife Vicky Cochran. They moved to this bungalow 10 years ago and have fitted in well with the predominantly retired community.
I've done all kinds of things for a lot of people on the street, quite a few. I've done extensions, I've done boilers.
You do out for anybody on here, and especially the old people. You know, it's been to move the snow and everything when it's snowing on the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning off the drive so they can get out. It's too soft, and I'm sick of telling him that.
The area, however, did have one recurring problem.
The houses are very nice, but the full street has a big issue, and it's all to do with water. So when it rains, because the soil is only about 10 inches deep, everything else is clear. So I've done drainage and all that at my own property, as well as doing it at other people's properties in the street.
A few years later, Mrs. Geddes, a former mayor of Carlisle, and her husband William moved into the bungalow across the road.
You know, we were friendly neighbours, and I speak to everybody on the street.
A few years after moving in, Mrs. Geddes asked Phil to do some work on her house.
And Mrs. Geddes pestered the life out of me every time I came home from work to see if I would do the same job at her house, because she had the same damp issues. The original quotation that I gave her for the £1,700 was from the right-hand side of the house along the front. Then she asked me to do right down into the back garden because that used to flood. So I agreed, it's not a problem. I said, yeah, while we're here, we might as well do it. So we did. I completed the job, gave her the bill, and that's when it all started.
Phil's initial quote for Mrs. Geddes of £1,700 had grown because of the extra work she'd asked for to over £3,000.
She said she couldn't afford to pay all that money. So I subsequently said, well, give us it here because I'll go and sort it out. I'll doctor it a little bit.
Phil knocked £750 off the bill, but Mrs. Geddes allegedly said she still couldn't afford it.
I said, well, I can't really knock any more money off, Jackie, because it's actually cost me money now.
It was important to get the money because we paid, you know, the materials, we paid the wages for the lads that done the job. So, you know, we needed that money back.
A few months later, Phil reissued the invoice. With interest added and discounts removed, it now came to over £4,000.
Now she needs to pay up. Obviously, if she doesn't pay, then I'm considering legal action.
But once again, the invoice remained unpaid.
It's not good. You take people on trust, you know, and especially a neighbour. If somebody says they're not going to pay, I'm just disheartened by it.
Phil decided to make one last attempt to recover his money by sending his business partner, Brian Ridley, to talk to Mrs. Geddes and record the conversation for him.
I was waiting for my business partner to come back out of the house, Mrs Geddes' house to see if he's actually got the payment from her. They were in there, I think, about 45 minutes.
I've been sent a pick a checkbook. The works that was carried out.
Right, well,
7665.
you might be doing that, but that didn't solve the problem. And that invoice is false.
How comes?
Because it was agreed that the cost would be 1,600.
He just says, we've got no chance of getting the money, and she says she's not happy. I said, not happy with what? She says, not happy with the job. So I said, well, why is it taking her nearly 6 months to tell you that she's not happy with the job? She lives right opposite.
He's got a track record.
Right.
Trading standards have a track record.
Right.
I passed the file to trading standards.
Right.
She said that she'd reported me to trading standards because it was still damp under her bedroom floor. There was nothing wrong with the job. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. If there was a problem with it, why didn't she say at the time when it was getting done?
But that wasn't the only surprise for the Cochrans. Mrs Geddes also claimed that she had tried to pay the bill.
I tried to pay him 3 times.
Right.
As soon as the work was finished, I went over with the cash.
Yeah.
But I said I wanted something in writing. I wasn't going to hand over £1,600 in cash without getting something for it. Oh, I'm too busy,
That's a lie. There's no way she's been to my house to pay me 3 times and we're too busy to take a payment. It never happened. She didn't come over. She was lying.
We just want to get what we're owed.
Yeah.
We just want to get what we're owed. That's it. I've never had any complaints from anybody about any of the jobs I've ever done for them. Everything is done to a high-class standard.
The Cochrans were left with no choice but to instruct a solicitor. But rather than a cheque turning up, the police did.
Sometime in January, we got a visit from the police, didn't we? Came to my house and said she'd had a complaint from the neighbour across the road.
I said, your lights are shining in a window when you're setting off on a morning.
And I've said, so if her house is opposite mine, which it has been for the last 8 years that she's lived there, she's never had a complaint before.
The police left happy, but a few months later, at 4:30 a.m.
Report of lights being shone into a neighbour's window.
I was in bed and I heard knocking at the window. So I woke up and I looked out the blinds and I could see the police, like, walking around Phil's van.
Lights of a vehicle opposite, full beam towards the house.
Open the door and there's 2 police officers outside.
Your lights shining directly into their property.
I've just been out to check the lights. They were on about me headlights shining over to Jackie Geddes' house. I said, well, I've just checked my van and my van's obviously running. He said he was on about the main beam. I said, well, you know, it wasn't intentional because I didn't know that the main beam was on.
And it's causing these people harassment?
If she's making a complaint, that's the harassment bit. She's the one harassing me.
Phil claims he tests his high beam every morning, and it was this that Mrs Geddes had reported as harassment.
Well, because I've had previous damage and that to my vehicle, you know, and it's company practice as well. I mean, you know, you've got to check your vehicle, you've got to make sure it's roadworthy on a morning. When the van started, the lights come on automatically, so the van lights would have been on, yes, because the vehicle was still running. I never had the lights on deliberately at all.
Not long after, the Cochrans received a visit from Mrs Geddes' husband.
So I said to Phil, I says, Will Geddes is at the door. So Phil's like, I says, what's he after? I says, I don't know. So anyways, I went to the door and I answered it. I says, yeah. I says, what are you after? He says, I've come for the uke back. This was a ukulele that I'd given my husband about 1.5 years before. It's just a little £10 thing, you know, practice thing. So I just looked at him. I said, have you got my cheque? He looked at me, he says, no, I don't think so. I says, what are you after? He says, Phil.
I asked him to leave my property 5 times. But while I was asking him to leave, he's then verbally assaulting me. I says, I'm going to tell you now, if you don't leave my property, I said, I'm quite within my rights to use reasonable force to throw you off my property. And then I shut the door, you see.
Phil reported the incident to the police, but their advice was to simply return the ukulele. Phil refused. He claims he was told that a police officer would call to see him in the next few days.
I was just about to put Phil's tea on. The doorbell went and it was the police.
I thought they'd actually come about the ukulele incident. They said that they've come to arrest me for harassment. I said, it's got nothing at all to do with harassment. I said, it's all because of the money she owes me.
I was gobsmacked at this.
Phil was arrested for harassment and kept overnight.
Cochran, if you go with the officer, he wants to ask you questions. You don't have to answer them.
The next morning, he was charged with harassment and granted bail. A date was set for trial.
We're looking at the CCTV footage, obviously sent to the police by Mrs. Geddes, of me coming out to my vehicle. That's me activating the key fob, where my lights actually flash, and I'm at the side of the van, so now I'm actually getting in the van. It shows me started my van, going around doing my vehicle inspections now, coming around the passenger side, along through past the headlights. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, Mrs. Geddes actually sleeps in this part of the house, where you physically can't see any daylight or van lights shine into our bedroom. She's never once been over. I mean, a normal neighbour would have said, you know, sorry, but your van lights are waking me up in the morning, could you knock the lights off? Nobody's ever said anything to me about lights. It's only when the police came knocking at my door saying that I'm harassing this lady with my lights. If I purposely position my van to make my lights shine in her bedroom window, purposely, explain to me how that gets me paid quicker. How does that get me paid quicker? But I'm literally not guilty of any crime because I've never committed a crime or intentionally shone any headlights at her property.
But the court didn't agree. He was sentenced to 180 hours community service and ordered to pay £650 court costs and £350 in compensation to Mrs. Geddes.
And she was wanting £1,150 something compensation for her, what was it, reflexology?
Yeah, reflexology.
Cranial therapy.
Was it osteopath or something?
Oh yeah, osteopath visits, counselling.
Because she can't remember numbers, she can't remember
Dates.
words, and she can't put sentences together. But they're all to do with my lights, you see.
I have never heard anything as stupid in my life. It was a 2-day trial for a set of headlights. That's the top and bottom of it.
3 months after the court case, where Phil was found guilty of harassment and served with a restraining order, the police arrived again.
Mr. Cochran in?
Is he, yeah?
Can we come in and have a word with you?
No.
We need to speak to him, all right?
Well, I don't have to open my door.
Well, you do, because we're going to arrest him for an offence.
What's the offence?
Well, we'll tell you when we come in and
No, just tell me what the offence is.
A breach of your restraining order.
In what respect?
You've breached it. The wording of it says you're not to shine your lights in the house, and
So where have I shone my lights in a house?
We've got evidence to suggest you have.
No, you haven't.
Right.
I've never shone my lights. So when did I shine my lights in a house?
We'll tell you in an interview. All right?
No, let me just tell you what it says in that order. It says I must not put my full beam on shining over to her house. So you'd be better leaving because you're causing me to feel harassed, distressed and alarmed.
Doesn't matter what you say, we have to come and arrest you now. Right, are you coming with us, Phil, or not?
Yeah, he's getting his pants.
Well, okay, right.
I'll tell you what it is.
So dressed like.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
The police decided to take no further action, and the Cochrans are still pursuing Mrs. Geddes through the small claims court. Mrs. Geddes has been asked about the dispute and chose not to respond.
He's not a cowboy builder. He knows exactly what he's doing. She just doesn't want to pay. It's as simple as that.
We won't be moving from this house. If she can't accept that, then she'd be better moving, wouldn't she?
Since filming finished, Mr. Cochran has been arrested again on suspicion of breaching his restraining order. No further action is being taken at this time, but the restraining order still stands, and Mrs. Geddes is still yet to pay her bill.